Hey, folks. Tonight, we're going to hear some of the most unsettling Bigfoot encounters and sightings that you've ever presented to my listeners and readers. Now, this is Fans of Monsters Radio, where the veil lifts one story at a time. Thanks for joining me. Now, some encounters are so vivid and so unexpected they shake the witness long after the moment has passed. Tonight, we are crossing into that territory, traveling through a series of cases that share one unsettling thread. Every witness knew they had seen something alive, intelligent, and powerful, and that whatever it was, it didn't belong within the boundaries of ordinary nature. These are the moments that redefine a person's understanding of the woods, the world, and themselves. As you will hear, the forests, farms, and forgotten corners of America form a hidden network that these beings navigate with ease. From storm drains beneath Kansas City to frozen valleys in Colorado, and from Maryland's river sanctuaries to the deep rural wilderness of Minnesota, each report offers another piece of a larger puzzle. The question is not whether these creatures exist, but why they appear where they do, why they remain unseen for so long, and why the people who encounter them are changed forever. Now, this first account, a quiet moment while parallel parking turned into a shocking encounter where a witness saw a small, hairy figure climb out of a storm drain in the West Bottoms district in Kansas City. What she saw raises disturbing questions about how these beings navigate urban landscapes unseen. Now, the witness was parallel parking her vehicle after finishing work in West Bottoms of Kansas City, Missouri. The West Bottoms is an industrial warehouse district on the western side of Kansas City, which has seen its better days. Now, many buildings have been abandoned over the years and have fallen into disrepair. Although some have been converted into condos or lofts, others have become haunted houses or indoor flea markets. Now, as she was looking backward to parallel park, she noticed a little hairy person emerging from a storm sewer. The creature was covered in dirt, dark hair that resembled fur, but had not quite the same. It was not quite the same. It was either dark brown or black and stood no taller than 3 to 4 foot. It was scratching itself when she spotted it. As she backed her car towards the large truck, the creature disappeared behind it, blocking her view. Now, by the time she parked and got out of her car, it was already dusk. Now, given the location near downtown, it makes sense that the creature would use storm drains to navigate the city. Now, the West Bottoms is bordered to the north by the Missouri River and to the west by Kansas City, and to the east and south of Kansas City, Missouri. If food is scarce, there are dozens of restaurants and businesses nearby with dumpsters full of all kinds of food. It's hard to imagine any other reason for it to be in such a visible area if it hadn't desperately needed food at the moment. Now, ironically, my wife and I had a flea market booth in the exact building. This is coming from my investigator, Carter Bouchard, where she lived. Now, when she had her event, the building was being used as lost, but as soon went out of business, it became a large flea market, and it's a small world. Now, this initial report was sent to me, and which I referred to Carter and for his interview and assessment, and so he wrote it up. So just imagine a juvenile Bigfoot coming out of a storm drain. It's hard to imagine, but she was very adamant about it. So you never know where you're going to see them. Now, this next account, a midnight hunt turned into terror when a witness using night vision realized the figure ahead was not human, but a towering horned creature that defied all known descriptions of Bigfoot. What followed was a desperate retreat that left more questions than answers. The witness tells me, it was June 1997 in north central Tennessee. Around midnight, the witness and his cousin were on a hunting trip, sitting at the edge of the large hollow filled with dense underbrush and numerous evergreens. Now, this hollow led into a larger valley with a clearing, which then extended to an ancient Indian burial site. After sitting quietly for a while, they heard a bush rustle deep within the hollow. The loud racket suggested that whatever was making the noise was large. Now, one of the witnesses was armed with a .22 Magnum rifle and had approximately 150 rounds of ammunition. Using his night vision scope, he initially saw what appeared to be a man. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that the figure was a creature of about 7 to 8 foot tall, covered in thick, dark fur, and was slimmer than the typical image of a Bigfoot, almost skinny, and it had a neck. Protruding on either side of its head were long tapered horns that were dark in color. Additionally, there was a horn on its head that pointed straight up. All the horns were approximately 5 to 6 inches long and matched the creature's dark coloration. Now, terrified, the witness emptied a 25-round clip into the creature before retreating to a nearby cabin about 65 feet away. The next morning, they could find no sign of the beast, only a scattering of spent shell casings and bullet holes in nearby walnut trees. The witness believed he had struck the creature several times. Nearby, animal traps had been sprung and all the bait was missing. On a nearby ridge, the witnesses discovered a series of tunnels made of bush and various sizes of tree limbs, vines, and leaves. They speculated that this could be the creature's lair, but refused to investigate any further. Now next, a family drive near Puxatawney, Pennsylvania took a chilling turn when an enormous dark creature, or figure, crossed the road in only 2 strides. Its height, speed, and glowing yellow eyes suggest a creature caught between 2 worlds. Now, he tells me this happened about 6 years ago. I was with my grandmother and my aunt, and we were driving back from Puxatawney one night around 8 p.m. As we were driving down a little hill, the darkness made it difficult to see anything clearly. And as we descended the mountain, our headlights illuminated the road, and suddenly a strange, solid black creature or figure crossed in front of us. It took about 2 long strides to cross the 15-foot road. At first, we thought it might be a shadow, but this figure is at least 7 feet tall, possibly even taller. It moved quickly, and we realized there was no way it could have simply been a shadow. It touched the ground twice and was across the road in an instant. What really stood out were its eyes. They were a dark yellow color and seemed to glow. The figure was reminiscent of a half Bigfoot, almost like a hybrid of a Bigfoot and a dog. It was massive and faster than any animal or human I've ever seen. Seeing that thing was genuinely creepy. I never really believed in stories like this before, but after witnessing it, I can't help but have a lot more faith in such encounters. Now, this next account, a veteran road worker and his partner witnessed something leap from a ditch and scale a 10-foot rock wall in seconds during a heavy snowfall. Decades of experience could not explain the creature's size, speed, or behavior. Now, the witness tells me, I recently read your article about the Paintsville train mystery, which I found pretty intriguing. Although I had heard about it around the time it occurred, I never thought much about it until I read your piece. Now, I've lived in the area for my entire 67 years, and I believe it's safe to say that many unexplained phenomena are happening here. I worked for the Johnson County Road Department for 27 years and heard numerous stories during that time. Most of these stories revolve about UFOs and ghost tales, but there have been a few that genuinely make you scratch your head. Initially, I was skeptical of what I was hearing. However, after experiencing something myself, I began to consider that there might be some truth to these other stories. So in February 2000, around mid-morning, my coworker and I were driving east on Tudor Key Road, working on a roadway as it was snowing heavily. We had been out since around midnight, but we were managing to keep up with the snowfall, and the road surfaces were looking good. We had just passed Hayner's Branch Road and were approaching the area where the power line crosses above the road when I noticed something significant jump out of the ditch on our right and run across the road. There was a 10-foot rock wall on the other side of the road. It cleared the road and climbed over the rocks in just a few seconds. Both of us had a good look at it, and we had no idea what it was. Now, I've never been a believer in Bigfoot, and I still have doubts, but I can't explain what we saw that morning. The creature crossed the road in about 50 feet in front of us and moved like a human. Now, we estimated it was about 6.5 feet tall and covered in black hair. When it jumped off the rocks, we noticed it had vast shoulders and relatively short but strong legs. Its head appeared smaller than a human. I have seen many bear, and this creature did not resemble any of them. On the other hand, after looking at various pictures of Bigfoot, I can't say any of them match what we witnessed either. Now, I've talked to a few people I know about what I saw that day. Most of them suggest it was probably Bigfoot, mentioning that others had been spotted in this part of Kentucky. One individual at the county animal control told me that his neighbor saw a Bigfoot digging through a trash pile one winter. The next day, he found large footprints in the mud, and his dogs wouldn't go near the area. So I decided to write you for your perspective. Even though I have lived on my farm for over 20 years, I have never encountered any evidence of Bigfoot or anything that large. Thanks for your time. I contacted the witness, and the next morning found him to be very genuine and sincere. He forwarded a few Google Map images showing the rock wall and the road where he and the coworker had the sighting. I believe it was likely a Bigfoot, but possibly a younger male. Now, he mentioned that he had heard of other Bigfoot sightings in the area, but remained unconvinced of their existence since his encounter. Now, the next account, a seasoned hunter encountered a suffocating wall of odor and unmistakable sound of something stalking him for step into absolute darkness. His instincts told him the woods held something powerful and unknown that night. He says, it was 1993, and I'm a big archery hunter. I was hunting at about 10 miles south of Winona, Minnesota. Now, at the time, I was diehard. I'm still passionate, but I was particularly intense back then. I sat until a little after dark and even lingered in the dark. I was quite a distance from my truck and had crawled out to my spot. It was pretty much pitch black, and for the first leg of my walk out, I went through a dense spruce plantation. It was very dark, except for the old road I was following. The area was tight and dark with spruce needles covering the ground, which made my footsteps quiet. I remembered the night being completely still, dead still, not unlike every other night. Now, after a while, I started walking out. I don't know, maybe 30 to 50 yards from my sight when I walked into a wall of stench. It wasn't just a smell, it felt like I hit a solid barrier. I didn't step back, but I could tell that if I had, I would have stepped out of it. The smell was not rotten. To me, it resembled a strong body odor. It was overwhelming. I thought, what the earth is this? It was so unusual. I moved on after stepping out of it, but didn't dwell on it. Soon after that, because the night was so still, I was walking on the pine and spruce needles when I heard something to my right, a little behind me, breaking twigs. It wasn't loud, but that silence, it was unmistakable. When I realized something was following me off to my right and behind, I would stop, and it would stop a moment later. I purposely stopped 3 or 4 times, and each time the same thing happened. I would stop, and it would stop too. I would wait in silence, and then I'd start moving again. I would hear it snapping twigs, snap, snap. It followed me for at least 100 yards, maybe more, until I reached the end of the spruce plantation, where the woods opened to the mix of other trees. I didn't hear it anymore, but I still had another quarter of a mile to get to my truck. I felt scared because I knew something was tracking me in there. I had just returned from Montana, where I had been a big game hunter for several years, so I was familiar with the woods. I sensed that something was off. I couldn't tell if it was bipedal. All I knew was that it was in thick brush, and if it had been a person, it would have sounded like an elephant in the darkness. I knew it was something out of the ordinary, something strange. Do I know if it was a Bigfoot? Absolutely not, but I knew it was something familiar. And coupled with the stench I encountered just before that, I started to think it probably was. So if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Fams and Monsters Radio. It really helps us out to reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification bell so you won't miss out on any of our live shows. Now, this next account, what began as a simple dirt bike ride, became a life-changing moment when a child heard heavy bipedal footsteps charging toward them in the woods. Later, the discovery of large footprints confirmed that something enormous had been there. Witness states, I was a private investigator for almost 15 years, and I'm now about 50 years old. However, what I'm about to share happened when I was a child. I grew up riding horses in the woods with my friends, and since my brothers rode dirt bikes, I also learned to ride those as well. One day, the 3 of us decided to ride a dirt bike through the woods in an area we all knew well called Harford Glen in Maryland. Since we were small, we could all fit on the bike, and at one point I wanted to get off, so I did, and my friends took off down the trail. Now, as I stood there, I suddenly heard a loud thud. I could feel it. It was a heavy object. Having experience with horses, I knew that a 1,500-pound animal felt like when it stomped its feet. This sound was different. It was bipedal and 2-legged. I heard a series of thuds and the sound of brush moving, and the noises were getting closer. I felt instant fear. I've never been afraid in the woods, as I had ridden my horses there many times alone. But this was different. Panic set in as I realized something significant was running towards me with long, heavy strides. I took off running down the trail, screaming for my friends. I called up to them on the dirt bike, shouting for them to stop. And when they did, I jumped on and yelled, "Go, go, go." We sped back up the trail towards my friend's house, which wasn't far away at all. I was terrified. They had to take me home afterwards. Now later, my brothers went out to search the area for answers. They didn't find anything, but did discover large footprints 12 to 13 inches long, resembling Bigfoot tracks. This all took place in the wildlife sanctuary of Harford Glen in Maryland, where the road ended right at the edge of the woods. We often rode our horses from a nearby farm just a mile away, all through this area, and we knew it was like the back of our hands. Now, what I encountered was indeed bipedal, large and heavy. As someone familiar with the sounds of a 1,500-pound animal, I am confident to say that the creature was distinct, significant, and substantial. I assure you that everything I'm telling you is accurate. My hands are shaking as I recount this story. The area was marshy and wet with houses on the outskirts. Now, in this next account, a search for abandoned ruins turned into a terrifying encounter as a mother and her teenage son realized they were being tracked through the woods by something intelligent. Deep footprints, strange vocalization, and a final roar confirmed they were not alone. Now, hello. My son and I had an experience with Bigfoot while walking in the unpopular part of Patapsco Valley State Park in Maryland. We initially set out to find the ruins of a town that was washed out in the 70s. My son was 15 at the time, and we weren't having much luck. From the very beginning, I felt uneasy. We were deep in the woods when we came across an empty ball field with metal bleachers and an old shack filled with outdated equipment. As we walked through the field, I felt an overwhelming sense of fear, as if we were being watched. I kept my thoughts to myself. Now, about 30 minutes into our walk, we realized we were in the wrong area. I thought to myself, oh great, I failed my angry teenager again. He's going to think that I can't do anything right. Now, while taking a picture of a burned up pine tree, my son said, this is lame, let's go. That's when things took a quick turn. As we turned around and walked about 20 steps, my son picked up a stick and banged it against a tree. I looked down and noticed deep footprints in the semi-dried mud, tracks that hadn't been there when we walked up. We took pictures, and when I tried to recreate the indentation, I realized I couldn't. Panic set in as I began to feel we were being followed. I had to quickly decide whether my child was safer in front of me or behind me. It was a terrible thought. I pushed him in front of me. He had a machete, and I was armed with just a stick. We started to make our way back, and this is what we encountered. We heard rustling along the path, and my son caught a glimpse of an arm. We then listened to the sound of a jug, as if someone were blowing across the top. We saw two different sized prints, small and large. And as we ran past what looked like bedding in the thick, cool grass, we began to feel safer as we got closer to the car. Then my son, still anxious, hit the tree with his stick. At that moment, a giant roar echoed behind us. I grabbed the stick and yelled at him, stop hitting a tree. We know it works. Run. We finally made it back. I kept muttering how I wished that experience had never happened to us while my son enthusiastically exclaimed, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, once we got home, I was overcome with stress. My son insisted that we needed to tell someone about our encounter. I thought, oh man, I can't deny it. My son was with me. That's when I began to contact Bigfoot specialists and a cryptozoologist. I often told my husband, if the Bigfoot person calls, tell them I'll be back at 7:30. Now, this all happened 2 years ago, and I've thought about it a lot since. I believe Bigfoot could be real and not real at the same time. Perhaps they are spirits of the forest. Ultimately, I don't care whether people believe me or not. It happened, and I have no reason to withhold sharing this story. I also advise Bigfoot researchers to stop encouraging people to bang on trees. Apparently, they don't like it. So this is the same park where I had my encounter back in '81. Now, based on the description of the location, it was likely the area around Daniels, Maryland, approximately 6 miles downstream from where I had my encounter with Bigfoot. The mill town was washed away in 1972 during the floods of Tropical Storm Agnes. Now, this next account, a farmer working on his land discovered large human-like tracks, then witnessed a Bigfoot walking away at close range. Later sightings and multiple eyewitness confirmations suggest a small family unit was living within the site of the nearby houses. Now he tells me, now on my farm in Apollo, Pennsylvania, there is a public area surrounded by houses. I'm a farmer, and I went there to do some electrical fence work for over 4 days. Now, on the first day, I noticed a strong smell that reminded me of an outhouse, even from 1,000 feet away, but I didn't think much of it. The next day, I discovered a large footprint on the ground. I thought, wow, what a crazy person to be wandering up here. The footprint was perfectly human-like. much larger than ours. The following day, while I was working on the fence in the evening with the sun setting behind me, something caught my eye. About 10 or 15 foot away, I saw Bigfoot walking away from me. It was stunning, with its hair shining in the light. It moved like an ape, but I felt a primal fear that made me want to cower in terror. I turned to run to my tractor, thinking about whether I could chase it down, but by the time I had turned the tractor around, it was gone. Now, before this incident, I called an investigator to look at the footprint I had found. I cast the footprint, and before he came over, someone had placed 2 trees across our farm road. When the investigator who had a PhD arrived, he examined the footprint and noted that it resembled ours, but much larger. He also evaluated the area where I had seen the Bigfoot and said, "You know what? There are 3 of them here. There's the female, there's the mate, and there's a little one." This all occurred right in the sight of our farmhouse and neighbor's house. So a year or so later, at my daughter's farm, I became aware of a trail in the woods where Bigfoot might walk. While I was out doing some haying and restacking hay, I looked through the small wooded area into another field. I saw a creature with reddish fur walking in the woods. At first, I thought it might be a deer or some briars, but it was red-coated Bigfoot. I couldn't do anything at the moment, so I told my daughter what I had seen down at the corner of the marsh at the back of the field. Once again, there were people around, and this wasn't out in the middle of nowhere. I told my daughter's boyfriend about it, but of course, they all laughed. However, we went over to the pub, and there were 5 guys that were talking about seeing a red Bigfoot. So I knew my eyes weren't deceiving me. I had indeed seen it twice. How about that? Now, this next account, 2 witnesses watched a 7-foot creature stomping through the trees as if warning intruders to get away. The sighting unfolded during the period of reported Bigfoot behavior that included alleged abductions and physical evidence. The witness tells me, "I'm an engineer and an eyewitness to a Bigfoot sighting that occurred in Colorado along the Platte River. This incident occurred approximately 40 years ago, specifically on Thanksgiving in 1984. A friend of mine was with me, so he witnessed the event as well. We had an extended view of what appeared to be a 7-foot-tall creature resembling a gorilla stomping on the ground and breaking branches, as if trying to scare away predators. We had a perfect vantage point sitting on a ridge overlooking a pond with a row of trees along the ditch at Slaughterhouse Gulch. We saw this creature, which we were initially trying to convince ourselves was just a guy in a gorilla suit, but that theory quickly fell apart, and we were terrified. We sat there, frozen in fear, as if it moved through the trees, stomping along the bank. We maintained eye contact for a good 200 meters, just staring in disbelief. There had been a wave of Bigfoot sightings that year. In fact, a girl was reported missing at Cherry Creek, a tributary of the Platte River, and she claimed that Bigfoot had abducted her, carrying her over its shoulder. Another teenage girl reported a similar story. The next day, we went to investigate and found footprints in the snow. Now, at the Cherry Creek sighting site, we saw more footprints in the sand. Now, it had snowed the prior night, and the snow was melting, causing the prints to disappear even as we observed them. The footprints appeared to measure 14 to 16 inches. There was another sighting connected to UFO sightings at another tributary of the Platte River, now known as Chatfield Reservoir, which involved reported sightings of deaths. Shortly after that, another sighting occurred at a trailer park in Woolhurst near the previous Woolhurst Country Club, also along the Platte River. A girl claimed that while she was out for a walk, something rustled through the bushes, grabbed her, and threw her over its shoulder. She showed us the jacket she was wearing, which was covered in strange-smelling hair that was unlike typical fur. It was thicker than human hair and had a distinct color that resembled a wet bull. This was nearly 40 years ago. I even plucked a couple of hairs from the jacket and they smelled horrible. At the time, we were intrigued because the missing girl had been reported and we joined a search party. Fortunately, the search and rescue teams found her just as we arrived and she was unharmed. Now, this last account, a pre-dawn commute turned surreal when a driver saw a towering Bigfoot crossing the road with a deer draped over its shoulder. Later, conversations revealed the area had a history of similar sightings and unusual activity. Dear Phantoms and Monsters, in December 2015, I saw a Bigfoot on Potter Hill Road west of Bolton Landing, New York. I was on my way to work and driving northbound. It was about 6 a.m. and still dark. I was approaching Lake Ridge Road when I noticed a tall Bigfoot standing from the road, then into the woods to my right. It had a deer draped over its left shoulder. I know this sounds crazy, but I can swear this Bigfoot was over 9 foot tall. I knew this because I came back the afternoon and measured some landmarks, including a road sign. I never heard of one of these getting that tall. It was covered in dark brown hair, almost black. I didn't get a clear look at the face, but it appeared to have very thick hair covering most of its body. It wasn't that bulky unless it was the angle from which I was looking at it. Reminded of Star Wars Wookiee in the body and legs. I noticed later that afternoon that there was a lot of blood and some tissue on the west shoulder of the road, so I just believed it was collecting roadkill when I saw it. I looked for footprints, but the mud was frozen. Now I walked across the road and into the woods where the Bigfoot entered. I didn't see any blood drops or tracks. It was so bad that there was no snow on the ground at the time. I walked almost a mile until I reached the edge of the yard where the fence stood. I turned around and made my way back. Now, as I got back to the road, a lady in an SUV pulled up to the stop sign and asked what I was doing. I told her what I had seen early in the morning. She told me that she had seen a younger Bigfoot walking through the woods a few hundred yards north of there back in 2008. She also said that some Bigfoot hunters had been in the area in 2008 but never heard of anything had been seen. I've heard the sightings in Whitehall, New York, several years ago, but that's the only mention of Bigfoot I'm aware of around here. Now, I've been back to the area a few times since December, but haven't come across any evidence. In April, my brother and I were a few miles from the location working at a house at Trout Lake Road. It was late afternoon when we heard a sustained shrill sound coming from the north. Neither of us had heard that before, and we both are in the woods a lot. If that was a Bigfoot, then I believe that they are in the vicinity. I'm going back in the area during my vacation week in July. Maybe spend the night in the woods. I now have some trail cams and voice recorders that I plan to place in the nearby gully, which I think Bigfoot is using to travel through. Any suggestions? I'm new to this, so I feel like it's a good opportunity to get my feet wet. So, folks, please use all caps when you post your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. Anything? I guess not. So as we wrap up tonight's presentation, it's clear that the Bigfoot phenomenon is far from more layered than the public realizes. These encounters stretch across geography, culture, and time. Yet the behavioral signatures remain consistent. Deliberate movement, situational awareness, and the presence that feels neither animal nor fully human. What we're seeing is a pattern that suggests intelligence and intent rather than coincidence. If anything, tonight's reports remind us that these beings are watching us just as closely as we try to observe them. So if you had an encounter of your own, large or small, reach out and let me know. Each new piece of the puzzle brings us a step closer to understanding what's sharing these forests with us. Stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Good night.